up by this NCRB report, especially when it comes to daily wage earners and self-employed people committing suicide. Joining me to take this forward is Brinda, Adige, women and child activist. We're also joined by Dr. Gitanjali, Natarajan, clinical professor and head of clinical psychology at Amrita Hospital in Kochi. Dr. Gitanjali, if I can come to you, give us a sense of this NCRB data, how you see this. And I'm going to begin with the high suicide rate among daily wage earners, self-employed persons. Daily wage earners accounting for 24.6% of all deaths by suicide. And when it comes to self-employed, it is 12.3%. And we're talking about the year 2021. This was a COVID year. Give us a sense of how you see this data.
The 2020, what we saw was a sense of common suffering, where people had a feel that everyone was together facing the pandemic and suffering the problems. But as towards the end of 2020 and beginning of 21, it was more of individual and isolated facing these realities, problems, suffering. And what we really saw was that there were a lot of people helping each other, and financial allowances, exemption, support, which was given in the initial years, which also added to the stress where they had to, the interest rates and what they had to return, the loans that they had to return, all that accumulated, and the financial stress also was very high. So that's why you see people who definitely needed to make that daily earning, as well as who were self-employed, who needed to generate their income on a day-to-day and monthly basis, seem to have taken the maximum toll.
Right. Dr. Gitanjali, you also feel that looking at this trend, daily wage earners accounting for the highest number of suicides in 2021, this also shows lack of access to mental health facilities among this category of people?
Definitely, there is inequality in accessibility and providing of mental health services, where it is the upper and upper middle class who are able to access quality mental health services, whereas those who are in the daily wages or the lower income strata, they definitely are not able to access adequate mental health, and that was especially true during the pandemic. If at all they were able to access the psychiatric or medical support, they're the very much essential counseling services which would help their build their resilience, or help them really equip themselves to face the stressors, the lack of resources, or the bitter realities that they definitely had to face. Those kind of counseling and psychotherapeutic services definitely were not available for them. So definitely this inequality,
Brinda,
and what you see is that maximum almost 70% of vulnerable, those who were disabled or those who were vulnerable, those who were mentally ill, they did not get the necessary mental health care during those times.
Right. Absolutely. And this is something that we have been debating over and over again during COVID-19 and even now. Brinda, Adige, to come to you now, 15% jump in crimes against women. Delhi was the most unsafe as far as this data goes. We saw 32% of total crimes against women being reported from the national capital. What do you think is contributing to this?
First and foremost, we must place on record that the crimes that NCRB is talking about is reported crimes. Based on that, they say that Delhi is the most unsafe place with all the other metros. One way I would like to infer this is good that there are more women or more such cases that are coming to the police station and getting reported. That is important because for too long, women have always been forced to stay silent and not report this complaint or talk about it anywhere publicly and forget coming to the police station. But the other part of the question that you asked is, why is it that these crimes are unabated Why is it that this increase in crime continues? Why is it that there seems to be no fear of committing such crimes by anybody? Whether it is the family members, because we also spoke, the NCRB data also talks about dowry deaths. It also talks about rape. In fact, 2 rapes of 2 children every day. And that shows that the state machinery, the justice system, the criminal justice system is not doing everything that they must do. The laws get enacted, yet those laws do not get enforced in the manner that is stated in the law book. And we need to ask ourselves, why is it that it is less than 5% of all of these crimes, especially crimes against women and children, just 5% of them actually see some form of justice, which means we are looking at almost 93 to 95% either acquitted or dismissed. So the blame or the onus and the accountability must be placed on the judiciary, on the police, and yes, on the state machineries. And that is why this crime
Right.
that we are talking about being unsafe for everybody. I think all cities, all towns have become unsafe.
Right.
Homes have become unsafe for children, for women, all of this. But this reporting of data, we want to encourage people to come and report. It is important that they report. Now it is important for us as a country to hold all the duty bearers in the state machinery accountable to what they are supposed to do and ask them why they are not doing this. Rule of law, there is no fear of law and this impunity with which crimes get committed.
Okay, I'd also like to ask you about certain crimes when it comes to women, kidnapping, cruelty by husbands, girl-child rape cases, dowry deaths. What needs to be specifically done to address such crimes? Because this is a story we almost address every year when the NCRB data comes out. What do you think we need to do in order to specifically address these crimes against women?
First and foremost, we have to create awareness and educate everybody. We need to educate children, we need to educate young people, families, communities, and certainly the duty bearers. Because we are a country who do not want to shun our patriarchal mindsets. We do not want to let go of the inequalities and discrimination that are heaped on women and children. We talk a lot about equality, we talk about safety and protection, but there is no dearth of us continuing that discrimination and that violence on women because of our patriarchal mindsets. Let us also place on record, our structures are very patriarchal. Time and again, we've had the police, we've had the judiciary who have spoken the language of discriminate, spoken the language of stereotypical, typically blaming the woman, shaming the woman, and saying things, putting themselves in places where the woman is the one who has to protect herself. So education is very important. Periodic training is important. I also think personally, due diligence of duty bearers who sit in these positions of authority, where they are expected to enforce, to implement, and to bring out judgments and verdicts that will at least put the fear of law, if nothing else, into perpetrators and those who commit these kind of crimes. Because now the messaging and the narrative that is going across is they can get away. They have got away. They will get away. And that messaging is absolutely unacceptable. 2, we need to tell women and children and families and communities, please come and report. You have to report these crimes. And the police must investigate the crimes in the manner that they are trained to investigate in their training colleges. Because they learn something, but they do something else. And thirdly, of course, we want leaders, especially religious leaders, political leaders, community leaders, to speak the language of respect and dignity to women, to children, to trans persons, to men also.
Okay, I'm going to get Dr. Gitanjali once again. Yeah, I'll get in Dr. Gitanjali once again, Brinda, Adige. Dr. Gitanjali, what can mental health care programs, also counseling sessions in schools, in workplaces, help reduce the crime rate in some of these categories?
Definitely. As I said, right now, during the pandemic, especially what we...
Also, Dr. Gitanjali, as
we are-
Brinda Adige was pointing out, a lot of times women don't come out and report cases. A lot of time people do not report cases for fear of stigma. How can counseling help in these circumstances? What more can the government do? Because the government has been talking about mental health programs. There is a budget allocation for mental health as well. But what more can be done to reach the maximum number of people?
So as I said, during the pandemic, a very important lesson that we learned was that mental health services and mental health was not just for mental health problems were not just for one small group of people whom we called the mentally ill, but rather that every single person needed mental health care and the mental health self-care. And sadly, though, there is some budget for mental health services. That is, if you see, it is extremely inadequate for the kind of problems that we are facing. And definitely, mental health programs involving counseling, resilience building programs, these will go a long way in helping individuals, equip individuals, young children, adolescents, face the realities and face problems that will definitely come their way as part of life, which sadly we are not giving much attention to. Programs which help in improving a person's psychological flexibility, just like yogasana would help us be our body more flexible. Our minds also need to be psychologically flexible. Sadly, that is not the case. So when young people, especially when they face problems, they immediately think of self-harm behaviors or suicidal attempts as a solution to their problems, rather than being able to do whatever is necessary to handle those problems, and then also being confident that this is not the end of life, that there is more to it, and when we have a stress or a crisis, there is life after that. So that sense of moving from one difficulty to a better life, and then there will be more difficulties that come by, we solve that and go ahead.
Okay.
That resilience is very much lacking in young people, and counseling services, mental health programs would definitely help in improving that among school children, and that way they would grow up to be individuals who are much more confident of handling their life difficulties, rather than resorting to self-harm behaviors, or even if you see, crime itself is the other side of maladaptive coping, where self-harm would be that aggression is turned inwards, whereas crime is you are trying to fight or cope with a problem by becoming aggressive to the society or people around.
Dr. Gitanjali,